Hello, everyone. Yesterday, I got some rather disturbing news. What Republicans are calling the Safe and Accurate Food Labeling Act, H.R. 1599, and what others are calling the Deny Americans the Right to Know Act, has passed the House with a vote of 275 to 150. What exactly is H.R. 1599? Well, here are the highlights. Okay? Any new GMOs being submitted to the FDA must have a pre-market certification, essentially saying this is safe, along with it. If the FDA accepts that, end of story. If the FDA objects, then they can specify labeling that says it's different. They don't have to, but they can. A food label can claim to be GMO free if it doesn't contain any direct GMO ingredients. So example, a cow fed GMO corn is GMO free. Labels also cannot imply any sort of material or safety difference between GMO and conventional foods. The FDA must allow but not require that foods be labeled as GMO. The FDA will regulate the use of the word natural on labels in such a way that it still means nothing. And it amends the Agricultural Marketing Act to establish a non-GMO certification. But perhaps most importantly, it preempts state and local restrictions and labeling requirements on GMOs and natural food. Now here's the problem. It's useless for consumers. It doesn't do what consumers want it to do, and it was essentially written by the companies who manufacture GMOs. A 2013 poll found that 93% of Americans favor a mandatory labeling law for GMOs. 93%. 93%. I mean, that's huge. That is more than 9 in 10 Americans. Try getting that many people to agree on anything. If there was ever a will of the people moment, this was it, right? When 93% of Americans want something, our representatives ought to listen. Of course, it's 1% of Americans who actually get to tell them what to do. So right off the bat, this bill sucks. It goes against what nearly all Americans want, but let's break it down a little bit. The pre-market certification is meaningless. Let's say Monsanto makes a green bean that secretes cyanide and says, hey Mike, this crop is going to make us a lot of money. Oh yeah, and it's probably not going to kill anybody. We're pretty sure. Well, it's going to make us a lot of money. And then Michael R. Taylor says, okay, sounds good. Give my love to the kids. Hey, did I mention that Michael R. Taylor, the Deputy Commissioner for Foods and Veterinary Medicine at the FDA, used to be Vice President of Public Policy for Monsanto? Okie dokie. So we've got denies will of the people and asks former co-worker to be in charge of taking your word for it. On to the GMO-free labels. The biggest issue with GMOs in America is centered around the chemicals that they're sprayed with and are immune to, namely glyphosate, the main ingredient in Roundup. Glyphosate has been shown to accumulate in the body, was determined by the World Health Organization as probably carcinogenic, and even at very low levels damages DNA. It also builds up in the food chain. So you feed your cows GMOs soaked with Roundup. But the cows aren't GMO, so they can be labeled GMO free. In other words, the law specifically and explicitly allows you to be lied to. It's about knowing what you're eating, right? Wrong. So then, allow but not require foods to be labeled as GMO. Well, duh. This literally changes nothing. Because GMOs are not regulated and their labeling was not regulated, of course it was allowed, but not required, which is what 93% of America wants. And then we've got regulation of the word natural. Okay, so I went ahead and looked up the applicable law, which is 21 USC 343, and looked over first what it already says, and second, what this bill amends to it, which were, respectively, nothing about natural foods, and, well, I'm not a lawyer, but it seems to be 14 lines of, we are pretending to do something so that you think we give a crap. Really doesn't actually change anything as near as I can tell. The GMO-free certification is far, far weaker than the current standards for USDA Organic or the Non-GMO Project or various state laws such as in Vermont. It's essentially meaningless, but it's filled with hoops to jump through. So anyone who wants to be certified as GMO-free is going to have a hard time doing it, but it'll give them an FDA-certified seal to make you think that it's safe when really it doesn't actually mean much. And again, this law effectively is a great big middle finger to every single voter in America who asked for GMOs to be labeled. So Vermont's state law, nullified. Various other states that have, if my neighbor states do it, then we will too laws, are also null and void. Basically, 275 people, mostly Republicans, just said, your votes don't matter. Your state has no rights, and you have no right to know what you're eating. So why is this a party issue? I mean, if 97% of Americans want something, surely that includes most Republicans too, right? Well, yeah, it does. But the GOP-controlled House doesn't care what you want. They don't care if you vote. They've gerrymandered the districts so bad that their entire states would essentially have to swing to the other end of the spectrum for them to even be at risk of losing their seats. They're set. They don't need us anymore. 275 people voted for this law, 45 of whom were Democrats. That's 230 Republicans, for anyone who's counting. Check my Facebook page if you would like a complete list of who decided you don't have the right to know what you're eating. Now, ultimately, this law really isn't about GMOs, okay? Not really. It boils down to 4 questions. Number 1, do the interests of a few corporations outweigh the rights of American consumers? Number 2, should the will of the people determine how the government operates? Number 3, do you, as a consumer and a citizen, have the right to make your own decisions? And number 4, should states be able to make their own laws regarding food? Well, the House of Representatives and the GOP in specific have resoundingly answered no. But there is still hope here, folks, okay? This passed the House, but it hasn't even been introduced to the Senate yet. And the Senate is not subject to the kind of gerrymandering that the House is. So they actually still kind of sort of have to care what you think. So write to your senators. Call them. Harass them. Tell them that you want to know what you are feeding your children. And tell them that this is so important to you that they will automatically lose your vote if they don't support your rights here. We've still got time, but you've got to tell them. Thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed this, or you'd like to yell at me, you have any other questions, then just like That Crazy Liberal on Facebook or subscribe to the YouTube channel. Have a great day. And vote.